Yes, I think. Yeah, good. We're live in both. Nice. Well, first of all, thank you people for being here. Those people that managed to make it on time today for this current live session from the series of the Speak Up Club live events that we have here every Friday now. It's well, not every Friday. It's now becoming a custom that is on Fridays, and the time we try to keep it steady, the same. But I'm sorry for those people that were let down last week, as you were expecting for us to have that session. We wanted to, but for reasons that we couldn't control, we couldn't have it, and it sometimes might actually happen the same way because we try to be every Friday here, available for everyone that follow us, but it's impossible to really make it every Friday. There's always something going on. Okay, so now, hello, Mr. Camilo. All right. If you have a question, shoot along while we are on this session. Well, let's begin, people. Remember the disclaimer. The reason for these lives is to actually help some type of support with practices that we normally use in our regular classes. To students of us that are still or have been working with us for a long time and are seeing basically how everything that we work in class actually has something to be used for in real life. And tonight, the topic that we're working with is the one that was portrayed in the announcement. Neon Genesis Evangelion or Evangelion, um, a series that is widely known by everyone. It's a classic now. You can find it in Netflix, I guess. So there is no real complication of you getting along the stuff, the content of what the series has to offer. Even on a quick Google search, you'll find uh, top 10 facts about the series of Neon Genesis Evangelion or Evangelion, and obviously something that everyone could agree on with regarding the series is the fact that it has been so influential even today, despite the fact that it has more than 20 years of being aired. It's so influential. The way the story is worked is incredibly actual, I would say. You can actually make current references constantly about the series because um, of how realistically developed each one of the characters. As you know, anime is character driven, right? So each one of the characters of this series were so influential in their contribution to what the whole thing came to be. That it's undeniable that it's a show to enjoy. Anyways, but the topic is not necessarily just Neon Genesis Evangelion. It's about the strange relationship that they exist between main characters, cases of Shinji, and their moms in this type of media that is one of our favorites, right? I'm speaking about in anime or manga, including obviously manga. Um, when we're speaking about the main character, we obviously have to refer to the main character of as you know the one that we are supposed to relate to. Somehow we filter dreams, expectations, many other different particular feelings of those type on the eyes or through the eyes of the protagonist, the main character. That's what we call the MC. And when you have a compelling main character, is the type of one that becomes like a portrait of uh, like the general man, the most common individual that everybody knows, someone everyone relates to. So of course, it's actually a trope that main character, for example, begin to be weak at the beginning, and then with struggle becomes strong. For example, that was a classic format. Main characters in at least action stories of the ones that we're speaking about normally were portrayed like, right? And of course, then with time, in current times especially, you see that obviously that model doesn't necessarily repeat itself. In fact, it's quite the opposite now. Like the main character becomes super strong and it needs to, fade out a little bit, or control itself somehow, in order to make the story interesting. And such is the case of One Punch Man. But even though we have that, right? About overpowered main characters. For every type of main character that we know, it's always the type of personality that tends to be a common trait for people to relate to. These stories being directed originally in the manga version to, for example, boys, teenagers, though everybody can actually like it, but being that the demographic that normally is supposed to be attracted to these stories, um, we know that obviously the connection has to be made somehow about something that kids that age will actually relate to. And these kids tend to have that naivete that normally young people from that time have. Normally, protagonists, shonen protagonists, obviously have a particular age range that doesn't go beyond that, and that's why it's considered shonen. In seinen, it can be all the way from being a teenager to being an adult. It doesn't really matter. To being a kid, to being a woman, doesn't really matter. The fact is that you have these particular instances in which the main character normally obeys a particular type of pattern, right? Now, the pattern that we want to point out tonight, especially using Neon Genesis Evangelion as a reference, this is the time for spoilers, so people be warned. If you haven't watched the story, you should. Okay. Anyways, let's see. Speaking about Neon Genesis Evangelion, the topic that we want to refer to is one that I seldom ever find anywhere when I try to, make research regarding the matter, because I think that this is in reality an important one, and is the, I say conflictive. It can be considered in a different form, but I would say conflictive relationship between the main character and their mom. Okay, in Neon Genesis Evangelion, and that you can use as comparison for many other different stories that were somehow influenced or simply just see themselves reflected on this work of Neon Genesis. I'm speaking about that situation that you could see reflected in Shinji's connection with um, the pilot of the first Eva, and Ren, and his mom. And as we know, spoilers, we all know that Ren is Shinji's mom, and we all know that it is really strange the type of connection they try to portray constantly from the perspective of we, the spectators, of Shinji's father taking Ren around as, improperly as that can be seen. Later, to be for us to find that this girl was actually an experiment, a walking experiment. And of course, he was the responsible one for that experiment to be, taken care of. But that level of detachment that Shinji's father showed throughout the whole show, for him and for wife, his wife's clone, etc., etc. We know that is beyond callousness, to say the least, right? We have someone that is so um, like non-responsive, like there's no gestures that show any type of emotion to, and especially any type of bond that they are supposed to have with these characters that they interact with. And we're speaking about, again, being capable of handling the life of someone that is the clone of their dead wife, the mom of their only child, and at the same time handling that child the way that they did, right? As a father, right? It actually makes me think of many different sources of study cases that we know of, well, due to education. As for example, what Carl Jung worked in his time regarding, for example, the genotypes. We have, for example, for women, the genotype of mom, and we know that this genotype is obviously some that's based on a stereotype of behavior, a stereotypical behavior, okay, that we can attribute to women, or at least to some women, um, of being motherly, right? And we know that not every mom. Hello, Mr. Espinosa. Welcome, welcome. If you have a question, shoot. So again, we can attribute this type of attitude to some women, in which, to whomever they actually consider they need to, they have motherly behavior. What I mean by a motherly behavior? A type of behavior that tries to sort of nurse, protect, uh, even uh, coach, sometimes even freely coach anyone, just because they feel that that person is in need of this type of treatment, right? Think about this. It's not really normal that an adult approaches another adult with the means of helping us nursing, like, like you really need my help, you to eat, to uh, dress better, to walk better, to talk better, etc., etc. There are people that tend to get these type of roles in society constantly, and normally these people are recognized by this type of behavior, being moms, because moms are like that. I had to teach a class today in which I had to speak about this figure, the figure of a mom, and I needed to use this example as, when when a woman is pregnant, she has a life inside their bodies that is connected to their bodies, like if it was some sort of tumor. If you think about this, it grows as a tumor does, right? And while it is alive, it is being fed with the life of the person that carries, in this case, this tumor, until it's given birth to. So you can say that that navel cord symbolizes a type of bond that is so heavy and so impossible to break. That is that bond that a mom has with a child. Every human life that we have in this planet comes from a mom, comes from a woman. As that relationship it exists there. We all have the possibility of have been born in this world by being men and woman, but through a woman. So of course, if you use this as symbolically as you want to, you can relate to many different traditional religions that use the idea of the mother as the actually the real creator or source of creation. Like, you have possibly known the idea of Mother Earth, um, Pangaea, Pachamama. Uh, what else? Many other different traditions actually consider that the mom the mom of all of us, this planet, is a woman. Is obviously a mother. It has that nursing particular type of behavior, to which Mr. Doctor, now I think it's a doctor, Slavoj Žižek, says that that type of mom is a crazy bitch. Sorry for the language, but I'm quoting Slavoj Žižek on this, which is, he justifies by saying that this mom is capable of dealing such heavy blows to their children, as in the same mom that we exist, all the conditions that are given for us to exist, there are all the possible tragic situations that can happen to any living being. And it's true, disasters of all type happen on this earth. And if earth is responsible for life, well, of course, earth is responsible for death too. To which we need to consider again that situation that was used as a reference in Neon Genesis Evangelion, of why the mom was needed to be used as the uh, receptacle of the capsule that was necessary to be used for the EVAs to be driven, to be rode, or to be controlled. Okay, we are speaking about a situation that is really strange to be understood if you think about this. For a pilot of an EVA to be capable of controlling one of these robots that we all know later on that we're not really robots, we're like giants or mutants. Anyway, for one of these robots to be controlled, they needed to be inserted this capsule. And the capsule where it was basically the cockpit of the pilot. And the pilot from there was supposed to control and sort of merge. It was a neural link between themselves and this giant robot slash giant clone. And the capsule was supposed to have the genetic information, the DNA of the moms of each one of these pilots. So, of course, the first conflict that we see about this information was how one of the EVAs attacks Ren, because maybe conflictive information, as they had the same gene, and being the same gene, we're not supposed to be the one going in the capsule, and as ways to protect the area of the capsule. The capsule was for their children, the children of the genes, the genetic code of that particular robot. You see what I mean? It's a weird, strange connection that the author of this story makes from how a mom is supposed to behave and how these robots were supposed to work. And that reflects on Carl Jung's work on, yeah, and all the psychological background that we have on how or what women, especially moms, represents to our psyche. How is it that we perceive the world through the eyes of being children, of having been born uh, from a woman, like every other human being has, but at the same time having to deal with that fact and using that fact to mold the way we see reality, right? It's quite the trip. So that's basically what we're discussing tonight. Let's see one of the factors that for me was the curious one. Shinji feels alone as he's being portrayed in the story from the very beginning, with living in a house of an adult that's being assigned as the tutor, and at the same time superior, military superior. Having that forced connection of authority and at the same time nursery. Well, I got Mr. Espinosa coming with a comment. I will let me finish this idea and I will read this comment aloud. So that force connection that you have in this case with the person that is controlling the life of Shinji as a minor, because Shinji is not capable to live with his dad. His dad has basically washed his hands over the life of Shinji, and at the same time, made him get committed by manipulating him, of course, to with the program that has the left, well, the remains of his mom as the capsule properties for that will enable Shinji as the only capable of controlling that unit. All right, let's see. Mr. Jose Andres says, "Do you think the reason why some people hate Shinji as a protagonist is justified? For me, they just hate Shinji because he's not perfect like other protagonists, and that's it." Well, you see, that's one of the things that I was referring to, Jose Andres. I was referring to that protagonists are not supposed to be perfect at all from the very beginning because they're supposed to be relatable. The problem with Shinji is that he's too realistic. The way in which he is portrayed is exactly how men normally tend to behave. And this is the issue where we're going. Look, we see how kids relate to the fathers and kids relate to their mothers. And we all know that no matter what type of family you are, there is a magnetic polarity on how you are driven to be treated to your mom in ways and different than the way that you are being led to be treated by your dad in other ways. So, for example, you got the typical, and I say atypical because it becomes sort of a cliche too, typical supportive father. The one that is constantly being over there, that is very dearly and lovely with the connection and bond with the child, daughter or son, and is constantly aware of everything that is happening around the life of the kids. And this father sometimes tends to be a little bit disrespected by the kids. I don't know why, but it sometimes happens. And others, it simply just that kids believe that it's too entrusted in their lives. Whereas there is the other father that is another cliche, that is the one that is very absent. I mean, the one that is working every day, sometimes even traveling within the week, and you never get to see him. And as you don't, you have a distant relationship with. Whenever he pays attention to you, makes it from a perspective of a person that doesn't have that time with you, so it doesn't know you that much. And as it doesn't know you that much, can be a little bit sloppy with comments, insensitive many times, and sometimes rude, and sometimes too stern, etc., etc., etc. So you see, we got ideas of how Mr. Shamey, though, we got ideas of how we relate to our parents. And this is a situation that goes even across generations. At least we're speaking about 20th century generations, right? Because we are referring to how have, men and women, sorry, have connected to their moms, and both connected to their dads in a different ways, as parents tend to act that way since there is a natural constitute a natural predisposition that is supported by a cultural construct. Okay, so coming from the beginning, we all know that humanity was born by bonds that were made by necessity. All right, and the very first bonds that men and women had by necessity were basically, the typical thing that everybody knows as the hunter, were the men, the women were the child bearers and child carriers. And then when families became steady and crop growers, it was the case of a mom taking care of the house, whereas the dad was taking care of the fields, and so on and so forth. Same situation with wars, same situation with dominance. Patriarchy had a contingent that was justified across the globe, but of course, all the crimes committed towards women throughout these years that actually got to happen, in a way happened because the conditions were given for that to happen. Like, I'm not forgiving anyone, I'm just saying that as conditions were given in which women had to thrive by being moms at the same time could actually find terrible outcomes depending on the luck they had. As we all know, it was basically luck what made women of distinctive type of social classes having a good life, having a terrible life. Okay, men on the other hand were ignorant throughout the whole process of the whole thing because, you know, going back to that example of not having to be the person that bears a child, not having that physical connection, having more an ideological connection to your offspring, it's really easy to be disattached. You need a lot of convincing in itself just to think that you are supposed to become a parent, right? As a man, and this is a situation that is true because, again, there is a natural predisposition, and then there is a social construct. Depending on your generation, you as a man are pushed to be or simply just too distant, or quite the opposite, being simply just being too intrusive. Okay, depending on your generation, it was expected of you as a father to act in one way or the other. So of course, lucky people that had the type of parents that believed or acted beyond their social standards and actually had the capacity of being supportive parents, um, but at the same time supportive in terms of giving a proper education, a home education, parents, a good example. Well, those lucky people had the opportunity to actually refer to anyone how good the parents were and how good the experience was by having this type of father figure. But we all know that it's depending on your generation. Sometimes in groups, in social groups, we can see that the examples that we got from fathers, men, is not really the best one. And that basically makes the options of actually people wanting to have some type of change, and it's needed to be done. Change in society in ways in which it was expected all the time that patriarchy was supposed to be leading decisions, when in reality this world is not only just men. This world is divided, men and women. It was not possible to be sus- you know sustain or withhold. for longer, especially the more we got a unified way of thinking throughout the whole world. Because that's basically what the technologies that came to be in the 20th century led to happen in the world. The fact that we had more, some sort of a more unified way of thinking everywhere. Everywhere we got to find out this about the same things because we got to find out throughout the media of the time. And the more the media advanced in terms of making people know whatever was happening globally, the more we felt the effects of people wanting changes everywhere. Well, the more we actually can say that because of technology, people have actually migrated from the way they think to the way they are supposed to be thinking. Here, much better. So, Shinji, going back to the question that Mr. Espinosa mentioned before, Shinji was hated, had been always hated because Shinji reflects men from the perspective of how pathetic men have become in society. I mean, I'm not trying to insult anyone. I'm just simply explaining how the story reflects this, how it is used an interpretation, sorry, of how it is used. Each one of the characters is used to portray how we do stuff. Like, for example, the lack of decisions, decisiveness, when decisiveness, sorry, when taking decisions, when making decisions in the story. For in the case of Shinji, that never really managed to quit whenever he said that he wanted to quit, but never really doing it, purposely as he was supposed to do it, not being really one place completely, but exactly in the middle and exactly extremely passive sometimes that it was desperate. It was pretty much exactly the same thing that a person in a situation like that might actually be. Imagine that you are being embraced by your mom, your dear mom that wants to protect you, whereas she's actually putting you in front of your father to be, to receiving the beat up because your father is coming to destroy the house. That is a really gruesome experience. Many people in the world have actually lived that. So you get to see that there is a connection between angels and Evas and the child inside the Eva in a capsule, fighting, at least mentally, fighting to protect the world. The world was, the possibility of being alive, but at the same time with doubt because the father was so adamant to destroy the world. It's because then possibly we were not necessarily wanted by father. So what type of right should we have if father didn't want us to be alive? That is the argument behind Tyler Durden in spoilers ahead, by the way, the Fight Club. Okay, we don't want God's children. We don't deserve God. Well, we don't need God, right? And that's why the reckless behavior of men have always actually surprised the other half of humanity, which is women. I remember a kid today who was saying candidly that he thinks that women in the classroom don't like his personality because his personality is really crazy. Then I asked him, "Do you think that it's easy to make friends when your personality is crazy?" And he actually obviously had to agree that no, of course not. It's not easy. So then I told him, "What do you need to do then?" And that's when we realized that, yeah, there was something related to his personality that he needs to check up if he actually wants other people to like him more. And it is true. I mean, if you only hang out with men, hearing men speaking the way men speak, your brain is simply going to be polluted with dumb stuff. And I'm really sorry, but it's true. Why is that? Because men mature way less, way slower than women. We're speaking about that particular connection. Women being capable of becoming moms had to develop senses in forms that men don't actually have the similar um, capacity. And why women need that? Well, because actually women require social support. For being moms, women require social support. So they actually made they trade networks um, to prepare themselves to become moms. A woman cannot really be a mom by herself. A woman requires a mom, the grandma, right? Every woman requires a grandma, and that's two people raising one child as it is. And then those of them that have family uh, money have even the option to pay someone else to basically raise the child, because that's exactly what happened with today's society in terms of people having the economic capacity. Many kids have been raised mostly by the person that takes care of them during the daytime. So of course, the customs that you learn are not necessarily the customs of your mom, are mostly the customs of that person that raised you. Okay, that type of relationship you have with your mom is basically something that is gonna mold how you perceive reality. If you have that type of relationship in which your mom is extremely nursing, so much that doesn't allow you to grow up, doesn't allow you to develop, it's like she gets hold of your arms and legs and doesn't allow you to move. Well, you will have a very difficult reality unless you learn how to move on your own. If, on the other hand, you are raised by the mom that basically lets you be, you are going to possibly become a very independent person, but might become a little bit disattached and not very sensitive with other people. Maybe you will have some problem with empathy. And empathy is necessary for many different things within humanity. I mean, if you don't have empathy, it's going to be difficult to relate to other people. And we need other people simply because we are social beings. So, of course, you could tell that women are better when it comes to social connections. See, we can see how the situation actually was portrayed too in Neon Genesis Evangelion, as the girls that were piloting had somehow better ways to use more dedicated maneuvers in the EVAs when they were working, as opposed to Shinji himself. And of course, you could tell that what was driving Shinji behind was his lack of decisiveness, his lack of proper decision of will, of being a man that becomes an ideal in itself. Men today have that issue, that major issue. We don't know what we want, and we are bombarded by so many different possibilities that we don't know what to choose. The majority of the times that I ask my friends in general, no, sorry, I'm gonna ask this question to my friends, my students. Um, hey, all right, tell me something that is good about yourself, something you convince yourself that you're really good at. They all struggle to come up with something. It's very difficult. However, in the case of women, they somehow gravitate to things that they can do physically, for example, as skills that they have learned. But for men, as it is not expected for them to learn physical skills. It's really difficult. So, when parents protect kids from learning stuff like, I don't know, cleaning their houses, organizing their clothes, um, taking care of their pets, you know, when you don't have these type of responsibilities at home, when your parents take care of everything, especially your mom does, you don't really grow up. You don't really understand that there is another world beyond you. And that shortens a lot the capacity that you have of bonding with people. And people will simply just see you as an annoyance. And you become an annoyance because in reality, you don't really understand other people's intention. You don't realize that whatever you want competes with whatever other people want. So you're bound to conflict with everything that you want in life. And you need to be capable of dealing with this thing in order for you to get what you want without conflict. But instead, you will simply just crash and crash, constantly crash against people that don't need to be your enemies at all. Such is the case of one of the conclusions we actually reached, speaking about this matter, was the fact that, mm, if, I mean, some authors, I remember Anne Rice proposing this in the book of um, Queen of Eden. If women were the rulers of the world, if the majority or if all the rulers of the world, instead of being men as we customary have them, instead of them being men, they were women. Well, women will not necessarily be falling into wars constantly, and possibly we will not have wars, at least no world wars. That is obviously fantasy. We're just thinking aloud about a little bit of our fantasy. Fantasy is always good to dream aloud. But it's actually something we should consider too, like how women resolve conflicts when men in general try to simply not ask for help but resolve it on their own. Pedro, hello Pedro, thank you for being here. He says, I have no enemies. Exactly. That is quoting uh, Thorfinn. Well, Thor's, the father of Thorfinn, actually was the one who said that to Thorfinn. But yes, you're not supposed to have enemies. So many people. There is a channel that I check. Hi man, hello Mister. Uh, Hi man is here. Nice. Awesome. So when it comes to enemies, there's a channel that I watch from time to time that is called uh, sorry, I'm gonna have to make a pause just to make sure I know the name of the channel. It's just I'm terrible with names. Avant Preach. That's the channel. Okay. They are political and cultural commentators, right? A pair of comedians that appeal mostly to the black audience in comedy. As one is Haitian and the other one is Black American, but living right now in Canada. I watch them from time to time because they make commentary on stuff that happens today in society, especially in Anglo-speaking society. They not only speak about stuff that happens in the U.S., they happen to speak about stuff that happens in other places which actually English is spoken to. So of course, it's good for practicing. I use that as making good references to some of my students, and just just simply to search because I'm not a young guy, so I don't know what's going on. I need other people that pay attention to stuff that's going on to get to finding out. And that's what I did regarding these two events that happened recently about one kid that wanted to rob shop owned by Arab people, a cell phone shop owned by Arab people, by going with a hoodie inside the shop, Didn't know that the door was locked when once he entered the shop, asking to see one phone. Once the phone was given to him, he pretended to go running out of a shop, and then, of course, couldn't go out of the shop because it was locked. And of course, the shop owner, being totally in the possibility of calling cops on the kid, was a kid, forgave him, let him go with I don't know if an apology, but still didn't even report him. And later on, even commented on social media like, if you need any help with food, whatever, they're gonna be there for this person. Going to all those means, right, of doing something like that. These people obviously having an ideology that is important to consider, being Muslim, and the shop was properly identified, as I remember seeing in the video. The other video, on the other hand, that they showed was a guy that got into a fight with the other guy because he held the door for another guy to enter the shop that was coming right after him. Held the door, the other guy passed, never said thank you. And the guy started speaking to the clerk of the shop. And this one, the one that held the door, came all the way to say, "Hey, you never say thank you. You never said a thing." And obviously they got into a fight, and obviously the guy got killed. The one that, never received the thank you. Why? Why was the need of you getting involved into a fight for doing something so rude and not doing something as nice as the Muslim shop owners did before? Why men sometimes tend to act like that, like, being capable of resolving things on your own is better than simply just ask for help. There's so many videos online, if you want to put it like the videos just like this. Why men die younger. And it is totally true that there is such a recklessness about male behavior everywhere. Okay, that's the reason why people that enroll to military are mostly men. Women are expected to be enrolled. Of course, women enroll, but they're not expected to be enrolled. Not as much as many women, of course, as men will. Men are expected to kill themselves for their country, which is today is even worse to be even, so it's not fathomable at all. People today don't even think like, yes, I'm gonna go to the border of a country and to get myself killed because I want to protect my country. It doesn't really happen that easy. You need to have a certain type of mental condition for this to happen, which is basically the type of mentality that the heroes in every story we watch normally have. Like, for some reason, you got orphans going like, cannon fodder, head first towards anything, as being the people that normally are the ones to be sacrificed, as being the people to be the ones that take the major risks. One Piece, for example, bunch of orphans. That's what you see among the protagonists of the stories. If you check on the ones, protagonists, the ones that have actually a mom represented in the story, as if it was a case of Sanji once and Nami, man, their connections to their moms and how that affected their behavior later on, it's impossible not to be actually, to relate to them. And at the same time to think, okay, well, but that's narrative. That's, fiction. Does it happen in reality? It does. It does. Two things need to happen in reality for you to have the personality that you have. One, your conditions. Whatever place you were born, gender you were born, economic standards, economic conditions you were born, etc., etc. Those conditions all matter. Even the time, those conditions matter. And The second condition that is needed for sure is your ideology push. Your ideology push. Sorry, not push. I don't know why I say push. Push. Your basically ideology push is basically what makes you crave for your, let's say, future constantly. That objet petit a that Lacan refers to as the drive, okay? The type of drive that people have in reality today. That thing that we don't know what it is, but we want to find it somehow. And sometimes we think that it is closer to what our parents decide for us. That's the type of character that some people have. The type of parent, the characters that listen to the parents' recommendations about to study whatever they go to study, right? There's the other type that don't listen to the parents' recommendation, and obviously they have a different path that they choose, and normally that path is chosen because it goes against what the parents recommend. So you have the two, right? The two ways. I don't know why it is always. It tends to be always in a dual comparison situation, where in reality there's a bunch of others. But those are the ones that work for this particular video that we're making. We have this situation in which men are not forced to grow up. Men don't see the possibilities that there are out there of actually bonding in reality with other people, simply just being more wholesome. Obviously, we know that men have friends, right? We have friends, and we think sometimes our friends are the best thing ever when we have friends. But you see, the older you are, the older you get, the more you realize that yes, friends are great, especially as memories. But it becomes complicated, to say the least, keeping up with them. It becomes complicated. Later on, it becomes so complicated that some people actually decide to not keep being friends anymore. It's weird. It is sad, but it happens. It happens with some people. Okay, some people just simply just fall apart, right? They fall out for reasons that sometimes are not justifiable and sometimes are. Okay, simply just you change with time. The way you think, you change. You start listening that your friend is going on with some crazy stuff about politics, and you said, I don't really wanna be related to that thing. So ah, possibly I'm not gonna be visiting my friend that often. That happens. Women, on the other hand, are more selective with their friendships. Of course, this selectiveness is modulated by the time and like mood situation that was part of the process of her growing. Okay, and you can see that depending on that, they can have like a more open social circle or more close social circle. Those processes are super important, but bonds for women have always been necessary for them to actually make their way out of the difficulty that the world was for a while, for the majority of history for women. You know, the capacities of emancipation that women reached in the 20th century were not even possible, would not even be possible if it hadn't been for the way women managed to develop bonds with everybody, to make people actually realize a simple matter that everybody's capable of, sustaining their own lives. No one needs to be, protected. No one needs to be represented by another person. A person should and definitely must be capable of leading their own lives and taking their own decisions. Being a man, being a woman, be whatever. The thing is, you guys need to consider that as you are men, if you are, you will have to consider the fact that you need to break the Shinji model. So you become more the mature version of what Shinji is supposed to be. Shinji represents the previous step, and we don't get to see, at least not in the first and original story, we don't get to see a grown up Shinji. Even in the very last episode, we see a Shinji that takes some decisions like, come on, man. But if you think about this, a person in that situation will possibly do the same. It's crazy, but it's true. Mental health of people, it's also something that can be, I mean, you can be prone to have terrible mental health if the conditions for your life and your emotional and moral drive have that particular way of not, let's say, not nailing it, like being disattached to reality, being out of touch of sorts. Yeah, Pedro? Yeah, I really don't know what's the need to. It's like people are all waiting for the littles just to explode and they go to another. Exactly. Well, you know what? In fact, um, Pedro, this is a challenge I'm gonna actually have to put on you, which is the time you begin to drive. The challenge is how long can you actually do the driving without really getting mad at other people driving around you. Think a little bit about this because one of these days you might actually have to begin driving. So let's see. I got another comment. He says, I watched this movie about this woman who was having a bad day and driving back from work. Speaking about driving, got into an argument with another guy in the highway. And this guy turned out to be a serial killer. Oh, yeah, with Russell Crowe. Man, that movie was scary. Yes, I know. And this thing happens. And well, you're to imagine what happened next throughout the rest of the film. Yeah, I guess it was one of those that leaves you like this and with a really bad taste in the mouth afterwards. Ever since Jeff, I got mildly traumatized. I decided not to get involved in avoidable fights if possible. Yes, my friend, need to avoid those things. Come on. Look, the problem is every fight, not only that is avoidable, but every fight, sorry, basically goes out there as the story of something that shouldn't have happened. You know, in itself, a fight is a failure, it's a blunder. Like when someone was not mature enough to react passively. No, when someone overreacted, and that overreaction is what makes the fight possible. So, of course, one of the tricky things about martial arts, I love martial arts training. I love being involved in the process of learning technique. I love sparring on the conditions of the martial arts that I practice when I practice, but I haven't practiced in a while. But I love that. I love actually being in a condition like this. But I cannot at all pretend that I'm gonna be enjoying a real fight at all. In fact, even after training martial arts, I had, let's say, a terrible opportunity of someone, challenging me for a fight, and it was great that I could avoid it because I don't think I would have, even though I knew what to do, I don't think I would have actually come out of that unscathed. And I don't want to suffer the consequences of being hurt in a stupid fight. You can lose a nose, you can lose a knife, you can lose the capacity of moving a finger, you can lose stuff by thinking that you win something by fighting. It's stupid beyond belief, but that's totally true. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, what could you actually do if that's actually something that happens? Being in a situation in which someone cuts you in when you're driving. Oh, I don't drive cars yet. I am riding bicycles to train myself mentally. That's an excuse that I said to myself too. But anyways, I do train myself mentally by riding bicycles next to cars, which obviously is completely risky on my side because there are crazy people out there driving cars, you know. And I see some of the crazy decisions that they make all the time. And some of them, for sure, might have been motivated out of pure pride, being butthurt by someone that was faster at decision making in a moment, whatever. And in that moment, there is a crash. And when there is a crash, consequences always happen, always are there when there is a crash. So I realized that, I mean, that decision making issue that we have as men, adult men, we need to come up with solutions to it. We need to stop being shingies and we need to actually uh, do something that sometimes is more aching of what women will do because yeah, women tend to actually be more decisive than men are. And I guess that many women actually get to be disappointed of men because of that in general. Not so much, well, actually, no. I guess it's worse when it comes to abuse. Abusive men, of course, are the ones that don't ever have the chance of keeping a woman around. But apart from that, there are those that are terrible by making decisions, at making decisions because you're simply undecisive. And being undecisive is just simply being immature. So this is a situation that we all need to work on. Shinji is a reflection of that, Mr. Jose Andres. And for that reason, I can tell you that I guess that's the reason why mainly everyone hates Shinji. He is the stereotypical man, the one that we don't want to identify with, that man. Well, and our reality is, how we bond with all the women, um, as all the women that we have in our world, as the women in the world of Shinji. You could say he was unlucky. I would say he was very lucky. He had all the chances of making things nice for him, but he didn't because of mostly because of his immaturity. When you, for example, you are a boy, 19-year-old boy, want to have a girlfriend, that girlfriend, if she's 19 as well as you, she's not gonna be 19 in reality. She's possibly gonna be 26 mentally. She will address your relationship as a 26-year-old girl would. Well, of course, you probably say that I'm exaggerating. Yeah, in every case, if I have to say that in everything she will act like a 26-year-old, of course not. But I'm speaking about her emotional reactions. I'm speaking specifically about that. The emotional reactions will definitely be as good as a 26 one, which is not something that you are trained for if you're 19. So that puts you in a disadvantage that you need to consider. If you are willing to start a relationship with a person at that age, well, begin to grow up faster. That's the best advice I can tell you. Grow up means begin to consider that other people have wills as well as yours. And as you have your own will and you want stuff, other people will have the same. They will want stuff. And sometimes they will want the same thing that you want at the same time. And that is basically positions for you, situations for you, moments for you to get into conflict and getting yourself into trouble, unnecessary one. So, my best advice for you guys is resolve that issue that you have about how you see the world with your mom. Try to gain her love and respect, but at the same time, independence. Learn to do your stuff. Learn to be boys, that are capable of doing their stuff, like not depending on anyone. So that's the best thing you guys can do to have a better life with your wives if you one day actually decide to marry. Because if you guys marry and you don't know squat about this type of things, your lives as married people will be awful. Again, you guys have the guy that will lose his wife because he's an abusive person, but you will definitely have the other guy that loses his wife because he never took the right decision. That happens too. Let's see. I got Iman. Iman. I understand that fighting or generating conflict is stupid at all. However, for some people, it's actually an indescribable feeling, indescribable, undescribable feeling where you don't think appropriately. I agree that it is indeed. Well, yes, there is the the factor of the uncontrollable, let's say, urge of your own, let's say, toxic masculinity. That is a topic that we have mentioned before. And we all know that it's not really toxic masculinity, it's just simply, again, another part of your lack of maturity. Not having your feelings on check means that you have not really matured many different things. And for example, sometimes we kind of like force the deal with the tone of our voice, with the twist of our wrists in the moment we're giving up something. And that is simply because we're just showing frustration. But you see, when we do that, when we show frustration, we sort of lose control of our own strength. And we don't know that there are people around us that might actually resent how we express that. Among men, it's not like that because men are simply just really passive when it comes to the reactions that people have about their moods. I mean, if a man sees that a guy, that's a stranger, is happy, the man is gonna say, "All right, whatever." If the same guy is sad, the man is gonna say, "All right, whatever." It's very strange that I will come close to a man that's crying on the street. If I see a man crying on the street, I say, "Ah, man, tough day," and I keep walking. And I don't consider myself a good Christian or a good Samaritan at all. I'm saying something as what a man will do because in my case, I would doubt that that's something good. I would actually think that maybe that's maybe a scammer. I'm gonna actually be avoiding situations like this. All right, but a woman is very likely that's gonna approach the guy and, of course, possibly be victimized by the guy. That's terrible. Please think about this. If there's a woman there watching this video, be careful. Um. Uh. Not reasonable to go and start a fight, but it's more like a break of the monotony that people feel every day. Yeah, exactly. That's motivated out of that break that you have is motivated out of the frustration that you can actually accumulate. And if you haven't really learned how to have your feelings in check, that's when that can happen. The moment that you force your voice too much, and maybe the other guy forces it too, and then say something that they shouldn't have, and then you react in a way that you shouldn't have, and the conflict goes overboard, right? Though again, it's better to not start any conflict. Didn't know that last fact though. Uh, yeah, yeah, that happens. I mean, there is the urge that is happening through the frustration that builds up, and there is also testosterone. I don't want to justify violence by testosterone, but it also happens that if your testosterone level is high, it gives you that extra confidence that you shouldn't have in a moment of a fight. Problem is, very likely you can see your way out of the problem by beating the other person, by winning. Somehow, your testosterone allows you to envision a path of victory that is never really there, but it's that fantasy you buy, right? You have seen so many movies. I don't know, even try to practice that move. Oh, I'm gonna take the weapon like this, and I'm gonna do that. You know, you don't know. You don't know when that happens if you're gonna be capable of doing anything well. Very likely, it's not gonna happen well if you never really practice it. There's another guy that I watch from time to time on YouTube that he speaks about fighting and from a really commonsensical, realistic perspective. He mentions that if you never, for example, if you're a boxer, you're supposed to give the jab as a boxer, and that jab is going to be as fast as a boxer will, right? If you're a really, really good jabber, well, that it means that you have practiced that jab for years and years and years. So, of course, if there is a situation in which you're going to have to use your hands to defend yourself, for sure, you're going to use a jab, right? Because that's what your body has trained to do. Imagine that you've never trained to get out of a weapon's range, like, avoid a weapon, a knife, a gun. You never trained that. You never practice like, you do this, the protocol to avoid a weapon, to avoid getting shot. You never practice that. So, as you never practice that, someone pulls out a gun at you. Do you think you will have the great mindset to react? If you aims a weapon this way, I can jump that direction. Do you think that you will actually have that? If you have that idea coming to you, it's a voice that's coming to you. That voice is your testosterone. Don't listen to it. All right? Don't listen to it. Don't say that, oh, I run. I practice running all the time, so I got good legs. Don't listen to it. Be careful. Be safe. All right? It can happen that you make a bad decision because your testosterone is simply just pushing you to do something crazy. All right. I got Pedro saying has nothing to do with the current topic, but I write it down before I forget. You owe us the pickup lines episode. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it, especially I use quite oh no, the pickup lines. But in reality, it wasn't really my idea. It was my friend, the other guy that was live online that day, Andres's idea about the pickup lines. I have to speak to him so we can actually come up with that because in reality, I don't have pickup lines. I never really had them. I was, let's say, when it was my time, when I was a single guy, my lines were too philosophical. So sometimes if I wanted to try with a stranger a line that would make me, break the bond, break the ice, and actually, start up something. Sometimes I ended up having an argument, so it didn't really work because again, too philosophical. But of course, I mean, from time to time, I was lucky, but I guess I was not really lucky because of the things I said. I was lucky because simply the, the girls actually are the ones who make the decision. It's not you. I mean, you try, but it's the girls the one who want to make the decision. Let's speak about that. All right, pickup lines versus reality. All right, I guess that's gonna be the topic. I'm gonna speak to my friend. Let's see if he's gonna be with us that day. Pero do you know how much a polar bear weighs? Enough to break the ice. That was one of them. I wish it was a great line to actually, break the ice with them. But look, it always, humor always works. Humor always works, but not your humor, her humor. If she has good humor, then she's good for you. If she doesn't, don't force it. Um, now, how do you know she has good humor? Right? Well, she needs to make an attempt. That's basically it. It's not that it's natural. It's difficult. We guys have a different sense of humor. It's because we're much more childish than they are. So when it comes to their humor, you gotta have to think more, right? Think always that you, especially if the one that you like is around your age, think always that she's older than you, right? You always work that way. Well, people, I think tonight we reached a milestone of actually quite one of the longest. But you see, we said the same thing about the one that we did 2 weeks ago. That was our last one. And it happened to be that there was a problem with the network and it was never really recorded on YouTube. So the one last week was totally lost on YouTube. It still is working on Instagram for those people who are interested in checking that out. For the one that's coming, so I'm gonna have to speak seriously. I'm gonna have to speak to my friend Andres to actually make that up to work on pickup lines versus reality as a topic. Pedro, such a conundrum you have put me to. But that's a good one. It's a good one. People, thank you all the people that participated tonight. Super awesome to have been seeing you today here. Miss you guys. Hope you guys are doing great wherever you guys are doing with your studies and with your own projects. I hope that you guys are making it awesome. And try to get as much confidence as you can be about as you can get from conversations like this one. I mean, if there is anything that you can actually get from this and that is positive, get it. All right, that's the best intention that we have for this particular space that we have for you. You guys are receiving the greetings from the producer, Miss Francia. She's saying hi. Then for hopefully it's gonna be for next week. You're gonna have that one, right? Uh, Pickup lines versus reality. That it won't that actually put me in competition with the blue pill guys? Pedro says hi from Miss Francia. She says hi back. So yeah, that one. Wouldn't that put me in competition against them? Ah, that would be weird. Anyways, guys, be seeing you. For everybody else, you guys are great. I wish you actually guys made yourself known by giving or leaving any comment in the chat regarding what you guys thought about this talk tonight, any impressions, whether you like it or not. You know, that would be really, really great for us to have an idea. Okay. Ayman also says hi. I'm on. She says hi too. Okay, and good luck too. Well, people, bye bye. Have a great one. So let's say bye first to the people of Instagram. Yes, 1 hour and end it there. Yes. Bye bye. Thank you guys too. For the people of YouTube, good luck. Yes.